Привет. So my presentation is workshop is gonna be about constraint layout, and if you want do those, let's say, examples with me and use your computer for something else than Facebook, and I'm talking to you actually, then there is a repo on GitHub. If you are not interested in doing this right now, just follow me doing things and check this repo later. Okay, so let's get going. I will show you. Just close this notification. Sorry for that. I will show you more or less how constraint layout works. How can you use this new UI editor, and then go through some examples how to convert regular layouts, so to speak, regular. So once created with linear layout or relative layout, how to convert them to use a constraint layout. Okay. And if you're going to check my repo later, there are two branches, master and workshop. On master branch, everything is just done. All the examples are there. In workshop branch, everything's empty, so to speak. So I will just use this workshop branch to fill in the gaps. Okay, so let's get going. The first example is how we can create. Oh yeah, maybe I will just start the app for you guys so that you can see how it looks more or less. So the app is basically a list of examples, and I will go just through all these examples. As you can see, this first example has this RL here. It means that it's example showing how to create layout using creative layout. The one below is meant to be the same UI-wise, but created using constraint layout. Okay. So I will show you how to create a similar view to this one using constraint layout. So basically, it's an image and first name and last name. Nothing really fancy, but I'm going to use this to show you how constraint layout looks and how we use this UI editor to create layouts. Okay, so this is something all developers more or less seen many times. It's an XML file. Let me make it a bit bigger for you. XML file with a layout, and this is the way I was just doing layouts all the time on Android. Basically, just playing with XML. There was a UI editor. This is actually a new one, but it's not. It wasn't really that good. So for me, it was always just go with XML. But then now we have this constraint layout feature and new editor for that, and it's super cool. And let me just show you how we can use this in action. Okay, so I'm gonna try to make this design using constraint layout. So how hard is that? Basically, we can just simply take all those elements from this old view, copy them over into constraint layout. That's a good first step. So that was previously in constraint layout, relative layout. Now it's in constraint layout. I can just simply copy all the views into a new container constraint layout. Of course, if I go to a preview mode and see how it looks, it doesn't look too good. Everything is top left corner because there are no constraints. So let me just create those constraints. I can do this from code, and I can show you that later how we do that from code, but I can also use this new fancy designer. I can do this both in this preview mode, or I can go to blueprint mode when I think things are a bit more visible. So how we create constraints? First of all, the important thing is all those anchors. They are in the corners, not in the corners, but in the sides of each view. And a constraint is basically a connection between two views. So to create a constraint is as easy as just to, let's spread them out, as take one corner of a view and drag, one anchor from a view and drag it to another anchor of other view. And now I have this constraint created. Okay? Of course, those constraints can go only from left to right, or left to left of other objects. So I cannot use top constraint to connect it to the side constraint of other view. So, but I can take this top constraint and connect it to this view. Okay, super easy. And like I said, you cannot do something, and basically, when I try to do this, there is no way to do that. So you cannot do this, and actually, UI editor is not allowing to do that for us. Okay, dobra. And now, next step is gonna be connect this view to this one. And more or less, I just recreated original view using constraint layouts. I was just dragging all those sides and connecting things, and it's as easy as this. Of course, there's a nice feature. I can just this is button here, shortcut to just remove all the constraints. But there is a nice feature, auto infer, when I just click one button here, and constraint layout is going to create all the constraints for us, trying to do what's best for us, or trying to achieve our goal. Of course, this algorithm has no idea what I wanted to achieve. So as in this case, as you can see, image view is not a square anymore, but all constraints are here. So I can actually just adapt now the code that was all those constraints that were created with auto-infer feature. So if something is not okay, I can just remove this constraint. Let's imagine I don't like this one here. I can just simply remove it. And if something really went wrong, I can just use undo feature to get back to the original version. So that's super actually useful, both undo and this auto-infer. And then I moved back to the version I created before. Okay, so I have all the constraints I really like to have. Now all I have to do is basically add more spacing that we had in the previous example. Just show me that I will show you that there is. Sorry, that's not this one. I will just show you that there was a spacing here. So as you can maybe see, there is a margin start that has value 30 dps. Okay, so I need to take this back to this new constraint layout view. How to do that? I can simply copy this code from here, and it should work. So let's start with the image view. I will just take those two layouts and copy them. Sorry, that's the wrong guy. And now we copy them wrong guy as well. Sorry for that. And I will just copy those two attributes to. I got lost. Sorry for that. Creating CL. So I was doing in a wrong layout, I'm afraid. Yeah, sorry for that. So let's take this example to proper file. Okay, so it should be creating here. Okay, no big deal. Okay, back on track. So now I'm just want to add this gap because this image view is moved from the top and from the left a few dps, and I want to take this to the new constraint layout based view. How to do that? I can use UI editor or just copy code over to the new layout file. I will just, in this case, I will just copy those attributes to new layout file to see how it's going to work. As you can see, there's a problem because I have a start here, so I don't need that. So in this case, it should work, right? I have this top margin start and margin top, so most probably the view is going to be moved aside, and actually it's not. The reason for that is that this view is not being constrained to the parent. So to use this gap, first of all, I need to constrain this view to a parent. If I won't do that, so now we have this constraint. If I won't do that and simply don't have this constraint and then try to run this example, funny thing is going to happen because without constraint, and now I'm starting the application, but without constraint, the view is going to be in top left corner. Why is that? Because there are no constraints from to the parent. So to move this view aside, first thing I need to do is to make constraints to the parent, like this. And then eventually, from the code, I can adapt the gap. So in this case, I go with margin left set to 50 and margin top set, let's say, to 80. And now, as you can see, the gap is here visible in the UI preview. And if I run this example on an emulator, you will see that it's not in top left corner anymore. So important thing is it's not enough to add spacing. We have to make sure that the view is constrained to the other view, because the spacing only works if a view is constrained to the other view. Another funny thing that leads to many problems is that, as you can see here, Android Studio is trying to change margin left to margin start. So let's do that. We should use starts, ends, and so that our application works for languages that are right to left, not only from left to right. But sadly, in case of constraint layout, so I changed left to start, and I'm running this on emulator. And it works, but sometimes, I'm kind of shocked to be honest, but sometimes when we go with start and not left, this padding doesn't work. So caveat here is don't change lefts to starts, because sometimes funny things happen. Anyway, in this case it worked, and I'm kind of shocked, but I'm glad it works. Okay, so it's important to go with lefts or starts. Anyways, if you want to have a gap, we have to make sure that the UI is view is somehow constrained to the parent or other view. Getting back to our example, I was doing things by just copying from the old view, but if I want to adapt a gap here, I can also use this thing on the right, top corner. Basically, when I click on a view in a constraint layout, in this right properties palette, things are changing. So for image view, I have a list of all the attributes of image view, like its size and whatnot. And also here on the top, I have something that is specific to constraint layout, and it's a tool to, for instance, modify a gap. As you can see, I can change a gap here to a few predefined values, or type in like 100 and create a bigger gap. What does it mean? In code, basically the value of margin top was changed to 100 dps. So I can easily do this from the code, like use 50 dps here, as the gap is smaller, or I can just do that here from this tool on the right. Same stuff with this text view. This text view is 30 dps from the left. I can change that into 24, for instance. And back to 30. Another funny thing is that there are those arrows here. Basically, it means what kind of size this view has. Those arrows means that it's wrap content. As you can see, it's wrap content here as well. And of course, it's same in XML file. But if I want to make this view a bit bigger, I can go with something like 200 dps. And I can see this indicator now shows something different. Of course, I cannot go with match parent, of course. And I'll show you an example why. I can go with 0 dps, and funny thing is going to happen that the view is still there, even though the size is 0 dp. And this is another funny thing about constraint layouts, that 0 dp in constraint layout is not 0 dp. It's a special value. Some people call it match constraint, so or any size. So anyways, 0 dp is not that won't make this view disappear. Okay. And to show you what 0 dp does, I have another example. More or less, the editing. How the editing works is basically we just take all the layout, just like in my case it was this relative layout. So not this one, this one. We can just start with relative layout, copy all the code into constraint layout, and then adapt things there from the code or from the UI editor. And of course, somewhere here should be, no, sorry, it's in a designer, I believe. So here in the designer, there is a shortcut to do this, so to convert relative layout straight to constraint layout. Never tried that, but if you are adventurous or have lots of layouts to convert into a constraint layout, you can easily just click this button and then, of course, adapt things. So we can just copy stuff over, adapt, create it from scratch, or just go with this shortcut here. Another cool feature of this UI editor is that when I'm now back into constraint layout, okay, and not into design mode. So another cool feature is that just imagine, let's imagine that I want to add another UI element, a view to this already designed layout, and let's say I want to add a checkbox. What's going to happen if I drag this checkbox here? So basically, this checkbox is top left corner. It's not constrained to anything, so I have to drag it, let's say, here, and create one constraint and another constraint, and most probably it's going to be okay. But sorry, like this. But what's cool about this editor is that I can click here. And now it's called auto constraint. So now when I just drag over a new view, it's not work. Anyways, there is this feature that doesn't work for me right now. Try it again. Oh, nothing doesn't work. Sorry for that. Anyways, there is another feature that doesn't work right now. Oh, nothing works. Sorry for that, but that's Linux. Anyways, there is another feature that allows us to just drag a new view onto already existing constraint layout with all the constraints created. And with this auto constraint feature, the new view will have a new constraint created automatically by constraint layout, so that we don't have to create those constraints ourselves. Of course, we can adapt them later. So it's useful when the view is already designed and we want to add one more UI element, okay? Sadly, it doesn't work for me. No idea why. I would just skip this thing. Just keep in mind that there is this thing here that doesn't work, but maybe I will try again. Sadly. I will try again. So yeah, there is this feature, okay? I will skip it for now. Most probably it works on Mac or Windows. So there is that. So as I said many times right now, that there's a way to create a constraint layout. You can be either XML, UI editor, copy old stuff, and even a converter. So it's not that hard to start with constraint layout, even though I have a problem with that, but it's not that hard, you can trust me. So let's go to another example. I will just start our application again and show you a more fun example of constraint layout. Come on. And that was a simple constraint layout. It's starting right now. The next one is going to be about centering thing and a bias. So there is another, okay, it's starting, and this is more or less the same view that we had with RelativeLayout. It looks the same, more or less. Basically, it's in constraint layout. So it's nothing fancy, but all relative layouts can be basically moved to constraint layout without any hassle. Let's talk about sizing, just 2 minutes, and then I will go to bias. Okay. So what we know about sizing in a good old linear layout or good old relative layout days, sizing basically were like three ways to set a size of a view. Like in this top example, which should be green, it's basically wrap content. So the view is as big as the content inside. Below I have read the last name, which is match parent. So basically, because the view is not being attached to the left side of the screen, so the match parent basically means take the whole space of that's available to the end of the screen. And the last example is just in this last name, which should be orange. It's basically, looks like orange to me. On my screen, it's orange. It's a fixed size set like 70 dps. And this is how it works in all good linear layouts and relative layouts and whatnot. Sadly, sadly or not sadly, but sadly when we are learning a constraint layout, later it's actually a cool feature. We don't have match parent. And I will show you what's going to happen when we just take this view, those three text views, into constraint layout. And I will show you what's going to happen with this match parent. Okay? First of all, I need to create constraints because there are no constraints right now. And this time I'm going to do this from code because it's super fast. So the first view has to be constrained to left of parent, okay? And has to be constrained to top of parent. So basically, now it's in the position because I set constraints for this green first name label to be left parent and top parent. So it can be now positioned in the UI. And with the second text view, I want to make it below the first one. So I just go with that my top has to be bottom of previous view. In this case, it's first name. And it's there, super easy. And then of course, I want my left side, so let's say it's going to be my left, to be left of the view above. And now you cannot see a change, and the reason for that because there is this match parent there. And I will just show what it really means, but first I will just add a constraint to the last view. Okay, and I want to say, let's say that it's going to be first name. So I positioned all those views from XML. It's super quick, and basically this is the same UI that I created using RelativeLayout. The only difference here is, as you can see, the red one is not positioned correctly. And the reason for that I use match parent here. Even though I said have a constraint, maybe I show you guys the constraint. Even though that this constraint here is set to go to the view on the top, but when I go with match parent here in the code, funny things happen, because match parent for constraint layout means the whole layout. And in this case, to make sure that this view is behaving correctly, I have to go with 0 dp. So now this view has 0 dp, which means that please view just have a proper size to match all the constraints that are set on you. So in this case, this view is not the whole width of the screen because there is no right constraint. But I can just simply say that for this view, I want also to have right constraint be set to right of parent. And now I have the same view that was in case of relative layout. See, no difference here. All I had to do was keep in mind that with relative layout, I went with, I will just make it a bit bigger. With relative layout, here I went with match parent because I wanted this red label to take the whole width of the screen, minus the gap from on the left side. And in constraint layout, I cannot do that. When I go with match parent, funny thing is going to happen. To achieve the same thing, I said just 0 dp here, and make sure that the view has right constraint set to right side of the parent. Then, if you go to the designer, you will see that this view has a left constraint set and right constraint set, and this line goes to the parent, left go to the view above, so this is the one here, and this is why this view takes the whole screen but has size set to 0 dp. Okay? This right constraint here is important one. And if I go without a gap, the view is going to take the whole screen even though the size is 0 dp. So it's again important to remember that 0 dp in constraint layout means take this all the space that is needed to match all constraints. Okay? Of course.
What happens if you make constraint layout just wrap content, not full width, but wrap content right now?
Let's see. To do that, I just go here and say wrap content. Cool thing happened, and actually this is expected behavior, I would say, because the wrap content is the view of the width of the whole constraint layout is set by this view here, because it has also wrap content. So most probably that's the minimal size that the size that has the constraint layout has needs to have this size plus the gap on the left, and that makes sense. Another thing that you can notice that basically you don't have to restart the app on the emulator to see that how it's going to look, because the preview mode and this blueprint mode in the UI editor works just okay. There is no reason to just install the app and test on the device every time when we tweak UI. Okay, so this is the same example. This is version in constraint layout, and this is original one with relative layout. The only hard part was actually to keep in mind that this red one here has 0 dp and right constraint set to match parent. Okay, that's important bit. Next one is going to be about bias. So let's imagine that you want to center something on the screen. Obvious thing is just let's go with relative layout. That's one line, a relative layout, and then in relative layout, all I have to do is maybe we just stick with this presentation mode so that it's bigger for you guys. Okay. So to center things with relative layout is as easy as just set this one line here, centered in parent. That's obvious thing. But the problem here is that let's imagine I don't want to be in the center, but I want to be in like in top 20% of the screen. How to do that with relative layout? Any idea? I know how to do that with linear layout, and honestly speaking, I would go with that. But there is another view. Sorry. So the only thing I found how to do that is actually using percent relative layout by Google. It's an external dependency, just like support libraries, and and basically it's we need to add this as a dependency, okay? And then with this percent relative layout, I can do things like set left or top margin with percents, okay? I can also set ratio, but I need a separate layout for that. Luckily for us, there is a constraint layout that can actually do those things, like center view on the screen, and eventually move it a bit with some bias. How to do that? So basically, of course, I will start with this view. I will take this view from relative layout and put into constraint layout. And as you may guess that this won't work. Margin stop and top doesn't make too much sense here because I want center view. And I can do this both ways, from code and from UI. I will do it from UI and then show you how the code looks like. So basically, to center view, maybe this time I will disable presentation mode. To center view using ConstraintLayout, all I have to do is move to the center. Not really. I mean, if I move it to the center and don't create those constraints, the view won't be in center because there are no constraints, and the view is only in the editor in this position. Okay. All I have to do is basically to center the view, create constraints from two sides. Then this view gonna be fully constrained in this axis, like this case gonna be fully constrained top to bottom. And then I can do the same thing from left to right. And by setting four constraints from this view to the parent, I just centered this view. As you maybe noticed, there is even a shortcut for that. So it's enough to grab this view here, and those constraints are created for us by UI editor. And to make it go a bit to the top, here on the right you have the slider to change bias. So if I want to be not in the center, but like this bias of those two constraints be actually 30%, like in this example, all I have to do is basically play with the slider. The difference here, though, is that this bias is about, it's not about this gap here in the top. So I cannot say that this gap now is 30% of the whole screen. All I said is that those constraints here, this one here is 1/3 of this one here. So basically, this is 1/3, and here are 2/3. Okay. So does it mean that it's 1/3 of the whole screen? Let me just show you that. What does it really mean on a device in this time? Okay. So when I run this code, and I see this how it looks on a device. So this bias here, this view has I think 20% set of 20% top margin, and so maybe I will just make sure that it's 20%. And I will make the same here. So, okay, so yeah, that was 30. So let's set it to that was 20. Let's set it to 30. So the problem is that it doesn't look the same because here I'm talking about the size of the gap, and then I'm talking about bias of those two constraints. So it's not going to be same pixel for pixel. As you can see, that's 1/3 gap here, and here is bias. So it's maybe it's hard to spot, but there is a slight difference in size. Okay, so it's not pixel for pixel, but it's a super useful feature, and we don't need a separate layout for that. And basically, the whole idea is that we can make a design that's going to look okay on different devices. Let me get back to this example, and all I have to do is basically fully constrained view in one axis. In this case, it's in both, and then play with those sliders here. Okay, it's as easy as that. Of course, from the code, it's also kind of easy. It's all about this one here line. So it's all about this line here. So I set bias to 30%. I can set it to 25, sorry, 25 or whatever I want. Okay. The another important bit is that the view is fully constrained. So basically, it means that it has all the four constraints: left, top, bottom, and right. Okay. So that was another cool feature, this bias thing. Let's go to another example. Next one gonna be, let's check in my app. So next one gonna be chains. That's super important thing because up till now, basically, I was showing all those features that we can do more or less in RelativeLayout. But with chains, we add the support, all those features that are available in linear layout to the constraint layout. So basically, constraint layout is RelativeLayout plus linear layout plus some more features, of course. But with chains, basically, now it's super cool. And all those complicated layouts with lots of nesting can be easily converted to constraint layout without nesting. I will show you kind of complicated example, but just, yeah. That doesn't look too good because I don't have all constraints set, but I will show you that here. Maybe I'm going to close a bit of them. So what are those chains? So first of all, there are a few types of chains, okay? Maybe this one. There are a few types of chains. These are here all chains. Basically, to create a chain, I need to take a view and make it connect with the other view and vice versa. So in my first example, when I was creating a view, let's say it was this one. Sorry, not this one. In this example, when we started, the constraint went only from one view to the other, okay? It wasn't, this last name was only connected to first name, and first name wasn't connected to last name. To make a chain, I need to, this constraint go both ways, so that the first name also is connected to the last name. How to actually do that, I will show you in my example, which is kind of complicated because I want to achieve similar thing to this. So it's a typical element of a list. Let's imagine that I have a list of contacts or a profile page. So of course there's a photo, first name, last name. They both take the same height of this container. There are two buttons. As you can see, this is twice as big as the first one. So to make such a view with old layout, basically as you maybe see here on the left, I created a linear layout. Inside I have an image view, then another linear layout, inside another linear layout, two views that take half of the size of this linear layout, one more linear layout with two views, and those views have set weights 1 and 2. So that one is twice the size of the other. And then with using chains, I can basically mimic this thing one level deep in ConstraintLayout. How to do that? So let's just start with copying stuff from the previous thing. I will start to copy with copying image view, so that we have the photo here. Okay. Also, of course, this photo needs constraints. So let me add those constraints. I will just connect it to the parent, and I don't like those gaps. I will just remove them. Let's set them to 0, okay? So now I have this image view. Now I need to add, once again, let me show you what I need to do. I need to add those two text labels. How to do that? Of course, I will start with just copying them from this code here. I will skip this linear layout and this one here. I will just take those text views and copy them over to my, my example here. And those two text views most probably gonna go to the top left corner because they don't have any constraints. So just let's grab them, and not you. I will just click here, yeah, and and I want this one here as well. So yeah, kind of big, but all right. So I just copied them over from the old layout, and I will just simply attach them here. And let's say here, and remove the top gap. And then I will just take this one from here and make it be here. So below first name, and the left side without gap is going to be in the same position that the left side on the view top on the top. Okay. So I'm almost there. But you can see, they don't take half of the size here, and actually they are on top left corner, and they are kind of small. How to fix that? I can just click on the two views, right click, and there's lots of funny things I can do, but one of them is center vertically. When I click that, as you can see, or maybe not, in the middle there's this funny sign. It's a sign of a chain. So basically what I just did through this UI, I chained those two views together, and by default they just take they have equal size in this container. How does it look in the code? As you can see, now you can see this text view here. The first name text view is attached to the parent. The top constraint is attached to the parent, and the bottom constraint is attached to the view below. For the view below, its top corner is attached to the view above. That's how we create chains. So basically, we need a constraint going into both directions. You can do this from UI or from the code. And by default, chain looks like this. If you want to switch types of chain, there is a button for that here at the bottom, but sadly, there is no Why it doesn't work? Should be. Oh yeah, sorry for that. I need wrap content here as well, and then wrap content here. Okay. So having those two views chained and having them wrap content, because when the size was set to 0 dp, both views try to match the constraints, and basically their size was set to half of the container. But if they are wrapped content, I can play with this button here and change the chain type to be spreaded or packed. And in case of two views, basically that's all I can do. If there would be a third view, I can be also spreaded inside, so that the third view would be here in the inside. Okay. So basically, I can do this here in the UI editor, but I wanted to take half of the screen, so I just set here size to 0 dp, and I have what I wanted, right? But I'm still missing one important bit. Is basically I'm missing those two buttons here at the bottom. So let's take them. We still have 5 minutes, so I will just take those buttons. They were here in the separate linear layout at the bottom, but I can simply just copy them over to my view. This time it's with ConstraintLayout. And without adding any linear layout, I can simply just put them here and try to put them under my first and last name. Of course, as you can imagine, we need to create a chain for that. So for those two views, I need to create a chain and then connect them with this chain here with first name and last name. So how to do that? Let's start with just clicking on them and right-click and go with center horizontally. So now they are chained together. They don't behave too good. Sorry for that. Make it a bit bigger. Because I need to constrain them with parent, but now they are constrained. I will also remove this constraint from here and this constraint from here. Yeah, all good, no worries, guys. So we are almost there. So those two views are chained together. They are attached to the right side of the parent, bottom of the parent, and the left side of the image view here. Now all I have to do is basically just set the gap to 0. Here is gap set to 10, so let's go with 0 as well. Right gap is 0. So those views are here at the bottom. Still not the correct weights, but I will fix that in a second. This view should be attached here. So now this chain is still working for me, so they both take half of the size here, okay? I will remove this -10 gap from here. Does it make sense? And now the gap is back to 0, okay? Let's add a big of a gap here, let's say 0, and I want to have 0 here. Okay, so all I have to do right now is basically to make sure that this view is half size of this one, okay? How to do that? I can do this from the code. No idea how to do this actually in the UI, but in the code, when we have a chain of two views, and those two views are simply chained here, I can just go with constraint horizontal weight, and it's gonna be horizontal actually, and set to 1 to this view. I'll make it bigger for you. So those two buttons are constrained to each other, so they are chained, and I can use this one line constraint horizontal weight to make them have different size, different weights. Just like previously I had layout weight, now it's called constraint horizontal weight. So I can just remove this. And most probably, if I go back to my design, this button is half of the size of this one. So to achieve something that was kind of complicated with relative layout, something like that, I had to create image view, and here constraint layout with two text views, and another linear layout here with linear layout with two views, and here another linear layout with those two views. And in constraint layout, it's as easy basically as just to put elements directly into constraint layout and then create chains. This is one chain, and this is another chain, okay? And let's start this on a device. Those gaps are getting bugged. I think that's something funny happening in the UI editor. Like this gap is set to 10 and switching back to 0. It's going to be 10 in a second, but that's kind of funny. But anyways, on a device, this is the original version with relative layout and 2 linear layouts. And this is the same thing with ConstraintLayout. This prof is a bit too narrow because of those values of gaps getting back from the UI editor. If I would just go here and just remove them from the code, where are they? It's 19, and I want it to be 0. So I have just to go here. It's 9. Just go here and remove this line. It's going to be okay. So yeah, I don't want to have margin left. Yeah, it was margin start. Oh yeah, that was the missing bit. Don't have margin left and start, because funny things going to happen. And that was a problem for this UI editor. The last thing I will just show you what cool things we can do with ConstraintLayout. Just in one line is this is the last thing. Is basically we switch back to the master branch because all the code is there. And there we have this feature of transitions, which basically, hopefully the app just started. Not really. No. Now it's starting. Okay. So this it's still building. Okay. So we just show you in the code quickly. Trust me. So I'm not wrong. Or maybe I won't. So sadly, I don't have this code in here. So we can do animations with ConstraintLayout as well, and it's basically one-liner. So we create one layout, another layout, and ask a transition manager to do animation between those two layouts. Of course, we have to keep in mind that those constraints has to be kind of simple, because if they are super complicated, the animation won't work. But if we create those constraints in this transition, keeping this transition in mind, then it's as easy as just to use one-liner to animate between two constraint layouts. And that's almost. Thank you very much.
Thanks.